Hey everyone, welcome to another Sketchfab live stream. And today we're going to talk about a topic that we get a lot of questions about, which is 3D scanning. And we just so happen to have an expert in our team to explain all the steps to us. So I'd like to welcome Tom to
Hello.
show you the entire process. Tom.
Cool. Thanks, Bart. Hi, everyone. Yep, my name's Tom Flynn. I'm Cultural Heritage Lead at Sketchfab, and I've been doing a lot of photogrammetry scanning for quite a while. I'm going to take you through broadly optimizing a 3D model in RealityCapture, uploading it to Sketchfab, and making it look nice with Sketchfab's 3D editor settings. There'll be plenty of stuff that we'll cover, and there'll be some other things that we'll leave out because the topic of photogrammetry is pretty broad, and also kind of a lot of it is down to artistic preference. But please do, kind of take it with a pinch of salt and like see how it can mesh with your own workflows and goals. A few community announcements that we have that we'd like to share before we get going. One thing is that we have begun running Sketchfab weekly prompts, and these are creative prompts, so a single word that we publish each week as a way to help generate creativity, to help you kind of have a habit of creating 3D content, whether that is 3D models that you're making from scratch or 3D scans, just ways that you can keep your hand in with your 3D creative work. And there'll be linked to more information about this in the video description. You might also, if you're interested in photogrammetry and 3D scanning in general, you might want to check out the one scan a day hashtag on social media and on Sketchfab. There are a few kind of impressive / crazy people who are making it one 3D scan every day of the year. This began last year with the Sketchfab CEO Alban actually kicking it off, and he continues to make 3D scans very regularly. So that's something you can join in again if you want to kind of start practicing your 3D scanning as much as possible. And one more thing, we're going to be talking, or I'm going to be showing you how I use RealityCapture photogrammetry software. And it's worth mentioning that Sketchfab has an agreement with RealityCapture. You may know that RealityCapture is also part of Epic Games, and so is Sketchfab. And if you subscribe to a pro subscription or above on Sketchfab, you can get some free processing credits. They're called PPI credits, and these are basically credits that let you export your 3D model. RealityCapture is pretty cool because you can download it and process a 3D model, see how it looks in the software, see if you've created a great mesh with great textures, and then you only have to pay by using the credits when you want to export the model. So that's something else to consider, and please do check out the description of the video as well for information on that. This video will be recorded and it will be made available after the stream as well. So if you've missed it, then we'll be sharing the link on our social channels as well. Or if you have to jump out for some reason, you can catch up another time. And please do leave any comments and questions in the chat on YouTube, and we'll be answering those and addressing them in the second part of the stream. Maybe what I'll do is I'll start showing you a few things because there's lots of content relevant to what we're doing or talking about in this stream that's already available on Sketchfab. So we have a great blog post on how to make your 3D scans look great on Sketchfab. Well, I say it's a great blog post. I wrote the blog post, but it covers a lot of what we're looking at here. So if you go to the Sketchfab blog, you can scroll through this, and it covers everything from optimizations, talking about textures, and the 3D settings that we're going to look at live today. So check that out. That's a link in the video description. The Sketchfab Help Center is one of the best resources for anyone using Sketchfab to get to know all of the different features, all of the different things that you can do, and you might be surprised to find some features that you may not have discovered. But if there's something you want to do on Sketchfab and you're not sure how, jump over to the Help Center. In the search bar, just start typing in what you're looking for, and there will no doubt be an article that will cover what you're interested in, and that does go from the very basics of what is 3D, if you're completely new to 3D, to how to upload, how to use the 3D editor, how to change your account settings like your username and things like that. So I really recommend visiting the Sketchfab Help Center when you need help with the platform. And then finally, again, links in the video description. We have 3D scanning and photogrammetry groups on the Sketchfab forum, as well as the Sketchfab Discord. So these are great places to meet other people that are into 3D scanning and share your work, get feedback on your work, learn about kind of the different setups that people have, the different equipment, and again, sort of a great resource to help you grow as a 3D scanning enthusiast. So let's talk about kind of photogrammetry in general. I think you see my screen now. The very simple description of what photogrammetry is it takes a bunch of digital images and you throw them into some software, click a few buttons, and then what you get output is a 3D model of the subject that you have captured. So if you can see on my screen now, maybe I'll make the icons a bit larger so you can see them. So I was in London over the weekend and I popped into the British Museum, which has lots of amazing scannable content, and I captured some photos of this colossal bust of Ramesses II, an Egyptian pharaoh, that's in the Egyptian galleries there. And this is a very big statue. It's kind of a couple of meters tall, meter and a half or so wide, and it's up high on a raised plinth to kind of give you the sense of how big it was, because it's only half the statue and the other half is somewhere else. But I took 126 photos with my iPhone, walking around the statue. So I was kind of just taking a sidestep. If you imagine me sidestepping around this statue with my phone pointed up, grabbing a picture, I was quite zoomed in, but you could also kind of not zoom in, but I like to have the subject quite big in the frame. And each time I took a sidestep, I was holding my phone slightly low and looking up, and then I'd raise it a bit higher and adjust the angle to keep the statue in the center of the frame. And then by the end of it, I do that a few times, and each time I'd end up with my arms kind of raised up in the air to capture the last photo from a higher angle. And this is what you really want when you're capturing images. Well, I mean, this isn't an ideal setup. I suppose what I'm describing here is a tourist 3D scanning setup. You're using your iPhone, you're in a public space, and you don't have complete control over the lighting and the environment. But what I was trying to do was to get a lot of overlap between each image. So between 60 and 80, or 80% overlap between each consecutive set of images, because the software will use the overlap to calculate the 3D form. So you can see I'm kind of been going around the statue, zooming in on different points, getting a lot closer, and you'll be able to see more clearly where I was standing in the software. So that's the start. I took a bunch of images with my phone, 126 images. There's not really, yeah.
Quick question for you. So you mentioned that you were using your iPhone, so that means you don't need to have high quality equipment to get started with this technique, right?
Definitely. And you don't need an iPhone either. Any smartphone will, if you can capture half decent images, general photography rules apply. So you want your pictures to be in focus. You don't want them kind of blurry. You don't want kind of oversaturated images or too dark. But yeah, you can use any smartphone or digital camera pretty much will give you some usable results. So yeah,
Brilliant.
a good way to get started is you don't have to invest.
And also, I was wondering, like, I don't see any people here. Like, was there nobody in the museum, or did you just wait until the view was cleared between taking pictures?
Because well, this is one reason I chose this particular subject is because it's raised up. I don't know if you can see in this picture. There's a little somebody's head there, but because it's raised up, it's easy. It was easy to take pictures of it because I was taking pictures over everybody's heads, and it was also the end of the day in the gallery, and I would wait in between. You know, if somebody wanted to come and look at the statue, I'd stop and wait for them to kind of get their fill and move on. Um,
That's
but
all.
all in
Thanks.
all, probably took me about, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to take the pictures. Um, what's worth pointing out as well, and this is relevant to what we'll see later in the photogrammetry software, is because it's raised up very high, I could not take pictures from a high angle. And this has consequences for the reconstruction in terms of the detail and the accuracy of it, but also it means that the software will not be able to reconstruct any part of the statue it can't see. So the very top is impossible for me to take a picture of from the ground. So that won't be constructed, but what you will see when we switch over to RealityCapture is what we can do about that, and what we can do in Sketchfab as well. So, do you think
Right.
there's anything I've missed there,
Also,
Bart?
like one thing I'd like to add is that we have another blog post that explains how to take good pictures for photogrammetry projects, and we will add a link to that in the description when we're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, plenty of great articles on the Sketchfab blog actually by people who have made a lot of 3D models with photogrammetry. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to RealityCapture right now, and I'm not going to kind of give you a step-by-step guide of the process of loading in the images and processing the 3D model. There are very good tutorials from RealityCapture themselves, some great videos, but it is, take my word for it, it's as simple as dragging and dropping your images into the software and then clicking a button to align the images and then a button to create the mesh, which we're looking at right now, and then to create the textures. So it's approximately 3-4 button clicks to create a 3D model with a couple of steps in between. But what I'll do is I'll kind of just describe some of the things that or that I've done here. You can see over on the right a preview of one of the images. All my images have been loaded in this panel over here. And then we have, I've already generated the 3D model, and this is the kind of first version of the 3D model that I created. So 126 cameras. I don't know if you can see in terms of the resolution, but what it says just here by the component, so the component is the 3D model, 126 out of 126 cameras, which means that all of my cameras, or rather all of my images, have been used to reconstruct this 3D model. Sometimes you might find that some images fail to be incorporated, and that might be for many reasons. It might be that the image is too blurry. It might mean that there's not enough overlap of that image with any other image. But if you get a nice high number out of the total number of images that you have captured, that's what we're aiming for. And as I'm rotating the view here, what I've done is in the view we can adjust the visibility of the cameras, and it gives us a preview of where I was when I was taking these pictures. So each of these little kind of pyramids with a rectangle, if I zoom in slightly, you should be able to see that it's a preview of the image that I took with the location of it. So if I look down from the top, you can see that kind of circle that I was describing, that I was sidestepping around, and it's not a perfect circle. And there's kind of images from here and there, further away, a bit closer. So I moved a bit closer for this set of images to take some more photographs of the face of the statue. And you can do this when you're capturing a set of images, is if there's a particularly detailed part of the subject, you can take more pictures of that. It really depends on how much time you've got and how much kind of control you have over your capture environment. But as I say, this was a few minutes in a public space with my smartphone. So 126 images is cool, and this is the result of the mesh that we can get. So this is just a preview of the geometry that was reconstructed, which is pretty good. You can see that there's a lot of noise on the reconstruction, and that's down to the camera for one thing, as well as the number of images and the fact that I haven't been able to capture images from a wider variety of angles, like I was saying, from looking down onto the top of the statue. But it's a pretty decent capture for, if I say so myself, for just a quick go in an art gallery. So you can see also the similarity between the 3D model and the actual statue. What I'll do is zoom in though on, I switch to solid, you should be able to see it a bit better. So this is, you can see some of the noise that I'm talking about. The statue is a lot smoother in real life, and also particularly on the nose, there's been some issues with reconstructing it properly. Again, not enough images from enough angles. Also, a lot of the lights in the British Museum were shining down into the camera as I was taking the pictures, and that can kind of throw off the reconstruction as well. But we have this okay reconstruction, 10 million triangles, very high resolution model. And what we want to do is get this model ready for publishing on Sketchfab. And so we have to do a few things, or rather, I would suggest you do a few things. You could, if you wanted to, upload a 10 million triangle or poly model to Sketchfab. The issue isn't really about you uploading it, but when people want to download and view that model, they'll have to download a very big file. And if they're on their smartphone at a bus stop, or on a slower connection, it will take longer to download, and on a lower power device as well, rendering 10 million polys or triangles on a smart device, for example, might prove tricky, and their phone might get rather hot in their hands. So optimizing, I did a few things. So this is just kind of what I did for this model and this particular set of images. The workflow, the process will always be different for whatever subject you're working on and what you're aiming to do. But I'm aiming for tidying this scan up a bit and publishing it on Sketchfab at a nice optimized resolution that looks good and conveys the essence of the real thing. That's what I'm trying to show people, this statue that they might never see in real life. So what I did, on the left here, I've done a few things, and you can see there's a number of models. I'm going to click through them. The first was this 10 million triangle model, and then I used the simplification tool in RealityCapture to reduce that to 5 million triangles, because what I did next was to export this model and open it in Blender, and I used the Blender sculpting mode, and I'm not going to show you that right now, but maybe that's something we can cover in another stream. I used Blender sculpting tools just to smooth and reduce, or rather, sorry, there was 5 million, I reduced it to 1 million as well before I exported it into Blender. When I'd finished smoothing, getting rid of some of this noise that I was talking about earlier, I had this version of the model, which you can see is a lot smoother. You could also say that we've lost some of the details as well, but for my use case, as I say, this is fine. Like I'm not going to be doing research with this academic research with this 3D model. I'm just publishing it for people to enjoy on my Sketchfab account. So we have a smoother model. You can obviously see that it's still, it's not been smoothed to the point where it's not recognizable as the subject. And what I have also done is textured the model. So this, you can see how adding the texture, or rather processing the texture, can give the 3D model a lot more life and kind of give the appearance of a lot more detail as well. And again, like I say, in this case, it's what we're going for. What I've done is, you can see, is that I've cropped off the bottom of the model as well as the top. So if we zoom in on the top, you can see, because the software has no idea what the top of the statue looks like, it's kind of just filled in with a best guess and kind of merged the edge color textures around the model. And that's okay. We can make a note of that when we publish it on Sketchfab, and we can do some other things I'll show you as well. But we have a completely closed model with a nice texture, but it's still 284,000 triangles. And I think we can simplify things even more. And I'll just show you that process, and it'll just take a minute or two. And maybe while it's processing, Bar and I can talk a little bit about the process or anything that I've missed. So I'm just going to go up to the top in RealityCapture with my 284,000 triangle model selected. And, oh, wrong one. Rather, I'm going to go to Scene 3D Tools and use the Simplify tool, which appears down here. And again, I'm not going to go into specifically all of the options here, but we are going to use the absolute simplification type. And what I've typed in here is 25,000. And it's the target triangle count is 25,000. So there's a huge reduction from that 10 million original to 25,000 triangles for the model that I want to upload to Sketchfab. Again, you could go lower, you could go higher, entirely up to you. You can decide and kind of, as you try different levels of optimization, you can see, at what stage you're happy. But 25,000, I think, should be pretty good with this particular model. I am going to enable color reprojection, so it's going to automatically reproject the color texture, and I'm also going to enable the normal reprojection as well. So what we'll have when we export the model is the mesh, a color texture, and a normal map as well. And oh, it's telling me that it may contain defects. Thank you, RealityCapture. But we're going to go ahead and process the simplification. And hopefully in a minute or so, it should be fairly fast. We'll have a new version of the model.
All right. Well, while we wait for that, Tom, there was a few things I was wondering about. So you talked a bit about the number of pictures you need to take and how you should move around the object, etc. Now I feel that this was an indoor capture, and the model was rather suitable for scanning as well because it was not too glossy, etc. Can you say a little bit about what are good objects to scan and which are notoriously hard or difficult conditions to work with?
Sure, yeah. So talking specifically about photogrammetry, like stone statues with matte surfaces are a great subject. Anything that isn't too shiny, and especially there's lots of detail on this statue, but at the same time it's a fairly simple shape compared to, for example, a tree with hundreds and hundreds of branches and lots of kind of overlapping what we can call occluding details. So things that are notoriously tricky are things with occluding details. So that's when something moves in front of something else as you're taking pictures from different angles. It means that you have to make sure that you give the software enough images to reconstruct the gap in between the two parts of a model. So if you imagine a statue actually with upraised arms, and as you go around, you'll need to make sure that you capture the backs of the arms and hands and all around each individual kind of part as well. But still, you get a good construction. You will have massive amounts of trouble 3D scanning anything that is particularly shiny, so a well-polished car will give you lots of trouble, especially not only because it's reflective, but also because large areas of very neutral or plane surfaces are tricky for photogrammetry software to reconstruct because it's comparing pixels, and when a whole blank wall, for example, if you imagine a painted white wall, it doesn't really know whether one white pixel in the bottom left is or isn't the same as the pixel in the top right, for example. So shiny things, very plain things will give you trouble, and anything transparent. So if you wanted to try and capture a vase, a glass vase for flowers, it's impossible to capture that with photogrammetry unless there are a few ways that you can kind of cheat. If you could, for example, spray paint the entire vase with a nice speckly spray paint and give it texture, you could then capture it in 3D, but obviously you then have a vase that you've spray painted. It might not be any good for being a vase of flowers anymore. So there are tricks, and some things are more suitable to other capture methods like CT scanning or laser scanning and things like that.
Right. Yeah. And what about lighting conditions? Like I've done a few outdoor scans, and I noticed that if you're like in harsh sunlight, it's really difficult to get something to work well.
Yeah, that's a good point. So when you capture anything, you're not just capturing um, the subject, you're capturing the lighting environment that that subject was in at the time. So say if you were in a field and you were capturing a rock on a bright sunny day, no clouds, there would be one side of the rock would be in shadow, the other side would be in bright sunlight. And that could be useful at some stage if somebody had a 3D scene they were working in that required a rock that had strong sunlight on one side and strong shadow on the other. But ideally, you would um, have very neutral lighting. So if you're outside capturing something on a kind of cloudy, overcast day, a bright, I should say, overcast day. So it's still bright, but the lighting is very even and diffuse. That would be the ideal condition for an outdoor scan. It also means that as you go around the subject, you may be pointing your camera towards the sun, for example, or as I said, like earlier, a light in an indoor environment, and that's going to cause trouble for one thing, the exposure of the image, especially if you're using automatic settings. So I should have said that earlier as well. So I was just using complete automatic camera settings on my smartphone. You can kind of, if you've got the time and the right kind of equipment, you can obviously spend more time setting your exposures per image as you go around, but that can massively increase the amount of time to capture something. Yeah, does that kind of make sense?
Yep, it does. Yeah. So like
Okay.
generally, like even lighting works better than harsh lights, and like dirty, dusty objects with lots of texture, like surface detail, work better than clean, shiny, like even colored objects. Right? Those are like two main things to keep in mind.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I mean, there are some interesting workflows, especially for iOS devices with LiDAR, where there, are apps coming out, or that exist right now that kind of are starting to combine the LiDAR scanning for the mesh with the image data for the texture. And similarly, there are workflows like that people have been using for a long time with, capturing the subject with maybe a structured light scanner or a CT scanner or a laser scanner, as well as the color data with a photogrammetry workflow, and then combining them together, either in the photogrammetry software for texturing or maybe in software like Blender or another 3D editor to bake the color data from the photogrammetry model onto the high-res geometry data. So there's so many ways that you can kind of mix the workflows.
You can explain that to us the next time then.
I'll
How are we doing
try.
on the reconstruction?
Okay, well, the reconstruction has finished a little while ago. and you can kind of see how much simpler the model is. You can start seeing individual triangles. In fact, maybe yeah, that makes more sense. Individual triangles, but I still think that we've got a good silhouette. We've even got a lot of the hieroglyphics are still kind of intact to a degree. But most importantly for me right now is that it's an optimized 3D model that is going to load quickly and download quickly for my intended audience. We can also look at the texture data. So what I'm going to do, so this is the 25,000 face 3D model, and if I switch back to the 200 or almost 300,000 face model, you tell me if you can see kind of, this is a rhetorical question, if you can see kind of a huge difference in what we're looking at. So personally, I can't see very much difference, but we know that the geometry is slightly different between the two, but that's okay. I'm going to roll down the information for this model and just show you we're looking at the color texture right now, but I can also have a quick look at the normal map that was being generated. So this normal map has been baked from the higher resolution model to the lower resolution model. And at this stage, I believe it's a world-based normal map, but when we export it, it will become a tangent-based normal map, which is what we want for Sketchfab. So I'm pretty happy with this, and I think it's time to export the model. And we could do this in various ways. If I go up to workflow, there are some options here in the output channel. We can upload directly to Sketchfab using the inbuilt exporter from RealityCapture, but I just want to show the output files before we upload them to Sketchfab, so it's not so much of a black box what is getting uploaded. So I'm going to click export, and we have all these lovely export options. I want to export this as an OBJ, so I can just type OBJ in the filter up here, and then we can choose from these options rather. So dense model and textures, wavefront OBJ, yes please. I've got a little folder here called optimized model, and my model title is, that's in spaces. It will output as the same name as your project file with underscores if you leave it as default. So colossal bust Ramses II. Click save. Oh no, I'm not allowed to have spaces, so we'll save it with underscores instead then. And then the options dialog that pops up. Do we want to save mesh by parts? Nope. Do we want to export vertex normals? Nope. Or vertex colors? I'll leave that on because this is something that people often do. And I'll explain a bit more when we get into Sketchfab about this. And in the texture settings, export textures, yes. Just go down to the color layer, export the layer, yes, as a JPEG, and the normal layer, yes, as a JPEG. We could choose any of these options for our output. For example, a PNG would be uncompressed, or rather less compressed image format, but I'm going to use a JPEG because I'm happy with that option for now. What else have we got maybe worth looking at? I think that's all we need to look at really now. We're exporting 2 JPEGs and a mesh as an OBJ, so I'm going to click OK. And then in a couple of seconds, exporting has finished. That's going to save my project. And that's all we're going to do with RealityCapture for now, and then we'll move on to uploading to Sketchfab. It's taking a bit longer than I was expecting.
So while you are making that switch, I would like to point out that we're about 30 minutes into the stream, and so just keep an eye on the time. Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll go rather quickly because we want to have some time to take questions. Okay. So we exported an OBJ.
we've got the OBJ mesh material file and two image maps, color and normal map, and there's also a RealityCapture info file, but we're not going to use that one. So I'm going to switch back over to my browser. So I'm logged in to Sketchfab. This is just the staff pick gallery, and you can, on any page on Sketchfab when you're logged in, you can just, I'll just show you that again if you didn't see. So I'm dragging from my window onto the website, and we're going to upload these files. So this shouldn't take too long to process, he said, crossing his fingers. And while it is processing, what we're going to do is look at this window, which is the model properties window, which is something that you shouldn't skip when you publish a model on Sketchfab, because it's a great way to help people discover your 3D models and to understand what the heck you are publishing. So we've got a title that came from the model file, which is great. And in the description, we can talk about many things, what the thing is, and also how it was captured. So if I just write quickly, oh, it's not capitals, captured 126 photos, can't spell, iPhone 13, process with RealityCapture. Oh. So you may have seen there that upload has finished processing, which is great. I'll learn how to spell and then carry on typing. Capture and Blender. And then I'm going to cheat this next bit when I'm describing what the model is. I'm just going to jump over to the British Museum's website, their online collection, and their listing just talks about it as a statue, and also actually refer to it as the Younger Memnon, which is another name for this particular person. Now I'm just going to copy. I'm going to add in a quote. So the description uses something called Markdown so you can use the Markdown syntax to add things like links and images. So I'm just going to add some text and also a link to where I got that text. So I'm happy with that as a description of what this is, so people can learn more and link off to the official source of the image. I've also got the Wikipedia page open as well, because I think that's another great place to direct people to, especially for something that isn't in a museum collection. Maybe you've 3D scanned something outdoors or a piece of public art, and you might be able to find more information on the artist and subject on Wikipedia, and you copy and paste a link back to the source. Let's set some categories. In fact, I'll just set one category here, cultural heritage and history. I think that makes the most sense. I think it's better, you can add two categories on Sketchfab if you want to, but I think if you have, if the second category, if you're struggling to see where it fits, then don't bother adding another category, just leave it as one category, because that will make the most sense for people finding your work. I'm going to add some tags. RealityCapture is a nice auto-suggest, Egypt, and Ramesses. Oh, no, can't spell Ramesses. Ramesses. Somebody's already put this in, so we can grab that as well. And we've got a nice discoverability rating. I'm going to make this model available for download, so I've moved over to this side here. I can click free, and I'll leave the model licenses just simply attribution. I'm going to allow AR, so on a premium and above subscription on Sketchfab, you can enable app-free AR, which means if you have an Android device or an iOS device that is capable of viewing things in AR natively, this model will be ready to go when it's published. So I'm going to save that. I'm not going to publish it just yet, and then I'm going to move over to the 3D settings. And there's only a few things. I'm not going to go through every single setting because we don't have the time, but I'll go through the settings I most commonly use. As we go through the tabs in the editor, so in fact, if I go full screen and zoom in a bit, you can probably see a bit better. what we're working with. This is the 3D editor, and there are some tabs along the top, and we're just going to go from left to right and adjust things as we go. So the first thing we might notice is that our statue is facing the floor. So I'm going to click Advanced Rotation in Straighten Model, and it shows us kind of where the floor is. And then we can use these arrows on the different axes to adjust by 90 degrees. Oh, upside down. So there we go, the right way up. And I'm also going to move the grid floor down just to underneath the statue as well. So it's now rotating along the right axis, which will help people navigate this model a bit better. I'm going to go next. I mentioned that I exported the vertex colors with the model. So what we've got right now, what we're viewing right now, is the 3D model looks very dark, you might notice. We're viewing kind of the vertex colors plus the image texture. So if this is something that you see with your 3D scan, if you have accidentally or on purpose exported with vertex colors, if you turn them off, you'll get back to just the image texture. And currently, the renderer that we're using is the lit renderer. You could, if you wanted to, simply switch to shadeless, which means that there's no kind of artificial lighting being applied to the model. So this is, we're looking at right now, the color data that was captured actually on site, but I'm going to use the lit mode and we'll adjust things to kind of hopefully make this look a bit nicer as we go. The background, we can choose a color. I'm not going to choose those colors, but we could have all kinds of colors, or an image. There are I've uploaded a few images. There are some presets in Sketchfab, but I'm going to, or rather, let's look at the environment as well. It's another thing that we can have. If we wanted to use a lighting environment, we can adjust how the environment looks in the background, whether it's blurred or ambient. We'll come back to that in a second. I'm simply going to use a simple kind of grey color, a little bit lighter, I think, just to keep the focus on the subject. I am going to adjust the camera field of view, so that just to show you what this does is if I turn the field of view up, when you zoom in a bit, you get this kind of distortion effect, and if I go even higher, you can really see kind of how it affects the view. I'm going to smush it all the way down to 0, so the field of view is also orthographic, yeah, almost, because I kind of like to see more of the model. If you see as I adjust, the perspective is increasing, but if it's down to 1, you can't get to 0. You get kind of a straightforward view of the model. I'll show you one more thing. If we wanted to, I talked about how we didn't reconstruct the top or the bottom of this this 3D model, and we might want to hide that from our viewers, or we might want to kind of leave it in there. But if we wanted to, and I want to show this because it's one of my favorite widgets in Sketchfab, we can turn on camera limit, and I believe, and Bart, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a Pro Plus feature on Sketchfab.
That is correct. Yes, this is on a paid plan only.
And I'm just going to adjust things a little bit. So that's in the middle. I don't want to limit the pan, so I want to let people, I'm right clicking and dragging here, I want to let people still move the model around a bit, but I do want to limit the zoom, so I don't want people to get in too close. I'm going to say this is close enough, and I'll set that from the view, and also I don't want people to go kind of too far out, and I think that's all right. It's set at 190, so I'm trying to zoom out more, but it's not letting me, so that's fine. And I don't know how this will come across on the stream, but this widget is very cool. It shows you a preview of the angles in which the camera can move, so I can grab on the actual widget itself, and if I keep pulling up and up and up, we could, if we wanted to, make it so that we can't view the model from certain angles. So this is quite restrictive, so I'm actually going to turn it off, but it is a kind of a cool option if you so wanted to. You can also do the same for the vertical, rather the horizontal movement of the camera. So we could say we only want people to view between, in this these particular viewpoints. So do experiment with that. It also just looks very futuristic, which I quite enjoy. But I'm going to turn it off for now and move on to lighting. And I'm going to zip through these now because otherwise we're going to go on forever and ever. First, we're going to look at the HDR lighting environment. There are many options. I've added a few myself, but Sketchfab's default options, switching between them will change dramatically how your model looks. So whether that's you're putting it in the Milky Way or using that as a background, I'm going to turn the brightness down a little bit so it's not bleaching out the model, or you can see kind of the way it makes the color of the subject change. The one that came up originally was the industrial room, and I quite like this one because it's a quite a neutral color lighting environment. So I'm going to leave that on, but I am going to turn off the shadow. So if you see what happens, if I'm holding down the Alt key on my keyboard and clicking the background, and you can see the shadow moving across. Obviously you can see the baked-in shadows that were captured when we 3D scanned this, but that's okay. We're not going to worry about that too much right now, but I'm going to turn the shadow off right now and just adjust the brightness to 1.5, let's say. It might look a little bit dark right now, but we'll fix that in a second. I'm also going to turn on a ground shadow so that our 3D model is not just floating in space. I'm going to turn on the baked AO shadow. So if I, this is another fun one to watch actually. We can adjust the height of where this shadow is generated. I'm going to put it back to where it was, right underneath it, so it appears to be sitting on the floor, so to speak. And already I'm kind of liking how this is looking, but what I want to do is kind of add in some dynamic lights. So this is this option at the top. I turn them on, and there's some presets we could use. But what I'm going to do is turn them off one by one by clicking the eye icon. I'm going to recenter this first light. I'm going to move it to the side, change its color to white so that it's not affecting the color of the scan. I'm going to adjust it just so it's kind of like a rim light on this side. Maybe it's easier to see here. Just bring this down so I can adjust it. If you see the effect that's having here, so just the edge, I'm going to attach it to the camera. So as I turn the model, the light is always going to be coming from the same direction relative to the camera. I'm going to add one more light. Double click the background to recenter the model. Let's adjust this light too. Move it over to the side, use the widget to change its angle. Again, change it to a white color so we're not affecting the color of the model so much. I'm going to reduce its intensity just down to 0.75 and attach it to the camera. In fact, I think we can make this even a bit more angled. This is quite a subtle effect. Maybe in fact what I'll do is I'll jump quickly over to the material settings. So I've just turned off the color texture for a second so you can see where the lighting is affecting the model. So it's pretty subtle, but that's what I'm going for here because there's already color and lighting information on this model. So I'm happy with the lighting. We've added dynamic lights, a ground shadow, and we've adjusted the environment as well. I'll turn up the color texture as well. In the material settings, I'm not going to go through everything here. I'm just going to make sure that my normal map is selected and applied, and we can adjust that here. I think it's probably going to be most visible in the effect it has on the hieroglyphics on the back. And actually, this is probably a bit difficult to see on the stream, but it is kind of bringing out the depth on those hieroglyphics a bit, so that's great. And we're not going to tweak anything else right now. What we could do if we didn't have a normal map, this is worth sort of just kind of showing you. If I zoom in here, again it'll be quite subtle, but if we didn't have a normal map, what we could do is set our color texture as a bump map. and this might be tricky to see, but if I turn it right up, we kind of simulate like the roughness of the stone a lot better, and we can kind of, don't go overboard, but we could set that at maybe 2 or 3. But we do have a normal map, so we're going to use a normal map. But just something to experiment with, depending on what outputs you have. So I'm pretty happy with this so far. We're going to add a couple of post-processing effects. There's loads of stuff you can do here. You can get very creative with your presentation. I'm going to add some screen space ambient occlusion, just to kind of bring out the form. Ambient occlusion will kind of essentially add a shadow. If I turn it right up, you can see a bit better, to the nooks and crannies on our model. That's a bit too much there. So we're going to take the radius down and use it kind of sparingly. In fact, I might just 0.1 and 0.5. I'll leave it at that. If I turn it off and on, you can see, in fact, I might bring radius and intensity down a bit. You can see what that does. We'll switch on the sharpness. Again, this is probably tricky to see, but when I just switch it on, it's only set to 0.2, and that's probably as high as you want to go with the sharpness. If I go back to the hieroglyphics again, and if we go crazy with the sharpness, you'll start seeing all these artifacts, and things start to look a bit weird. So be very, very gentle with your sharpness. We just want to sharpen things up a little bit. Switch on the vignette. Yeah, I like the way that looks. We'll leave that just so. And then tone mapping, I'm just going to bump up the contrast a tiny bit to 0.2. And yeah, I think I'm done there with how this model looks. I'm happy with that. I'm going to go up to the top left, click Save View. Let's add an annotation to give a little tour of this. So this will be our initial view when you load the model, but I also want to zoom in on the face just so people get a better idea. Yeah, and I'm going to double click and imaginatively call this, give this a title of face. We could add similarly images and links using Markdown in the description. I'm not going to do that now. And then let's also draw people's attention to the hieroglyphics as well. Oh, now I need to pretend like I know hieroglyphics. That may be how you spell it. I'll let you tell me in comments if that's right or
yourself, are you?
But so this is what we see originally, and then people can explore the model with some annotations, and you can put plenty more in if you want to. Last thing we're going to do, then I'm going to stop, is we're going to set up the scale of this model. I don't have the exact dimensions of the statue to hand, but I will do my best guess. So here's the initial viewing position for in VR, but also the scale would be applied to viewing this model in AR as well. So first things first, I'm going to adjust the floor so that the model sits on the floor. This is almost, I think it's maybe a little bit too big. I would say that that's a close approximation of the size. The grid on the floor is 1 meter by 1 meter. So if I did know or look up the exact size, I could use that to better set up the scale here. But again, I think that'll do for now. Again, hit save the view, just so I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to hit publish. And we can go and see the model as it will be on the Sketchfab page. Everything loads up nicely. If I was on my smartphone, I could click View in AR, or if I was on a VR browser, I could click View in VR to view the model in different ways as well. I can obviously click full screen mode if I want to look at that. If I wanted to explore different parts of the model, I could hit the I key to bring up the model inspector, and we could look at the normal map and the matcap and the matcap plus surface, for example. The wireframe we could switch on and off. if you really wanted to kind of inspect the model, as the name of the inspector implies. There's our description. People can download it, add it to their collections, share it on social media, embed it in their websites if they so wished. So there we go. We've gone from processing a 3D scan, doing some editing, optimizing it, popping it into Sketchfab, uploading it, and using some of the 3D settings. There's way more to explore with regards to 3D settings, I think, that you might want to look into. Again, the Help Center, the forums, Discord, the blog are going to be great resources for you if you want to explore those options. And I'll leave it there for now. I hope that's given you some cues and some ideas.
Thanks, Tom. That was a super thorough walkthrough of the entire process, and I really enjoyed seeing the model go from pictures to the final thing on Sketchfab. That was very enjoyable. We have a few questions from viewers on YouTube, so I'll go through them one by one and see what we can say about that. So first question by Test is, if it's possible to export different maps from RealityCapture like a single normal map or AO. So I think you kind of touched on that a little bit, but not like, can you just export the one map, or what are the different options there?
To just, you only, maybe I assume they're asking if they could only just export the color map without the mesh.
That is how I read it, yes.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't use that workflow myself, but if that's what you needed, you could export the different maps as well. I can't remember if you can. I'm just going to bring it up. Generate an AO map. That's something for me to look into. But normally I use XNormal to generate an ambient occlusion map from a high resolution 3D model to a low resolution one. Right. Maybe a question for the
I suppose baking an AO map would give you a better quality than the real-time screen space ambient occlusion that we have in the 3D editor, right?
Yeah, definitely. But if you don't have an ambient occlusion map, then the real-time AO will do a good job.
Perfect. That sounds right. Yeah. The next question, Daniel Witch asks, would using a turntable help instead of going around an object? For smaller objects, of course.
Yeah, 100%. Like that's a good thing to bring up is the other or another photography workflow for capturing images. So I have downstairs in our laundry cupboard, I've kind of got some black velvet. It's a very small cupboard, and a turntable that I've covered in black velvet that I'll put some more things on. And then I've got a ring light with some polarizing film on it. And I put a subject on the turntable and then rotate the turntable by X number of degrees, probably normally like 10 degrees for each image, adjusting the height and angle of the camera as I go, turning the model over. What you need to remember when you're using that workflow is that you need to have a really good separation between the subject and the background. So that's why I've got this black velvet all over everything in my setup, is so that I can either just throw it directly into, for example, RealityCapture, and it will ignore the background essentially because there's no data there. I'll adjust my settings on my camera so that the background is almost pure black, or as pure black as I can get it, and then you can reconstruct the whole of a particular model. So if we were reconstructing Ramesses again, you could turn Ramesses, if he was a bit smaller, onto his side, capture the bottom as well. If you can't, you don't have like black velvet or something, what you can do is you can manually delete the background using image editing software. Yeah, I mean there's so many different tools that you can use. That other software like Metashape has options where you can import background to remove it from all your images. Polycam on the smartphone has kind of an object masking option automatically. So I think that's going to become less of a hassle. But short answer, I'll stop talking, is that yes, you could use a turntable as well. And that would give you much better control over the lighting for one thing, so that we wouldn't have all these kind of baked in shadows on our subject in the color texture.
Right, thanks. And you just quickly mentioned like flipping a model over during scanning, so that will be useful for having like scan a shoe, for example. You wouldn't be able to scan the soles without doing it in 2 steps. But how do you bring those 2 pieces back together afterwards?
Ooh. Well, it depends what software you're using, and it depends what kind of what image sets you have. What you can do is if you reconstruct, for example, or if you throw all your images into RealityCapture, you could then it will probably reconstruct 2 different components, and then you can use the control points feature. So that's basically telling the software this particular point on a 3D model or an image is the same point on another image or another 3D model. And then once you have added enough control points, the software will use the control points to match up the different sides of or different orientations of the model. If you throw in, as I mentioned, kind of if you mask out the whole background, or the background is completely plain color, black or white, for example, you'll probably find that, or in my experience, RealityCapture will reconstruct the whole set of images in one go. You won't need to kind of align them, but there is a process for doing that if there's not enough overlap between the 2 orientations.
Okay, thank you. 2 more questions, and then 3 more questions, and then we're done. First one is by Alianoi Ate, and they ask, how can we add measurements to our models?
Short answer is that you can't, but you can, well, so if we're talking about in Sketchfab, you can scale your model within Photogrammetry software before you upload it, or even in a 3D piece of 3D editing software, again, like Blender or Maya, whatever you're using. If you know what units that software is using, or kind of what measurement units, and also the size of the subject, so that when you upload it to Sketchfab, the model would already be at the correct scale. I'm not sure off the top of my head, say if you had a model that was 10 meters wide in your editing software, you uploaded it to Sketchfab, if that would be converted to 10 meters on Sketchfab or 10 centimeters. This is a common issue across 3D softwares, that the measurement units don't always match up. You could use the VR AR editor to do a rough scaling of your model, but you wouldn't be able to display those measurements unless you use, for example, the Sketchfab API to build something clever. There is a labs experiment on Sketchfab, so I think it's labs.sketchfab.com/experiments. Has a measurements tool which can you can click 2 points on a 3D model, and it will tell you the unspecified unit distance between those 2 points. So again, you'd have to kind of have something of known scale, maybe a scale bar that you have captured along with the 3D model. Yeah, something that a lot of people actually asked, especially from the cultural heritage community, and I think it would be an awesome thing to add to Sketchfab at one time, is an on-screen scale bar, and something that you could, for example, put in the exact units of measurement for your height, width, and depth of a 3D scan. So not a great answer, but currently you would do it in your third-party software.
Okay, thanks. And then final question here is by Jishu Arts, and they ask, can RealityCapture scan humans as well?
100%. Yeah, there's a lot of companies out there who 3D scan people. Often they have a camera rig because people move around, and you don't want your subject to move around even a tiny bit when you're taking photos. So instead of having one camera that takes a while to go around and take pictures with, they have a camera rig of hundreds of cameras, and they can take 300 images of a human in a certain pose in a split second, and then run that through RealityCapture. And I believe RealityCapture has been used in all kinds of film VFX processes to do exactly that, and video games as well. to produce 3D models of actors that can be used and animated, etc.
That would be fun to see in real life. Well, thanks, Tom. I think that brings us to the end of the show and of the questions. I have to say I enjoyed it very much. As I said, seeing the entire process done like that is very enjoyable. Thank you for your time, and thank everyone for watching. We should be back with another live stream early next month, but more information about that will follow. We'll also update the video description to include all the links that Tom has mentioned so far, so you can browse them at your convenience later on. Any last words from you?
No, thanks to everyone for watching, and yeah, I hope it's useful. And like I say, I'm around on the site if people want to ping me with questions, leave comments, or the forum and Discord as well. But yeah, it's been good. Thanks for hosting me, Bart.
My pleasure, Tom. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.